What's happening, everybody? On today's show, meltdown on the plains. What is happening at Auburn as first quarterback Bo Nix enters the transfer portal and dynamic running back Tank Bigsby reportedly going to enter the portal. We will talk all things Auburn with our buddy Zac Blackerby, host of Locked on Auburn, to discuss it all. And we'll go around the conference with the latest news across the SEC. Transfers galore. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked on SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked on SEC, everybody. Great to have you guys along. Today's episode is brought to you by Sonos. Sonos is the official sponsor of ESPN College Football. Go to Sonos.com to learn more. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked on SEC your first listen every day. Remember, Locked on SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Let's jump right into it. No waiting, no messing around. Let's bring in our buddy Zac Blackerby, host of Locked on Auburn. Zac, everything has been set on flames in Auburn.
Oh, Gordy, is there something happening? Is there something happening around Auburn football these days?
Yeah, Brian Harsin's the worst hire in the history of Auburn, apparently.
That's what a lot of folks are thinking right now. That's what pump the brakes, but nothing like dumping everything at like 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, right? When the Monday morning edition of Locked on Auburn is recorded and in the can and scheduled to go up. Nope, had to do multiple pods on Sunday because then the Bo stuff came out and then the Tank Bigsby stuff came out. So craziness, absolute craziness with, everything starting with Bo Nix making that Instagram post, which, Gordy, I'd love to hear what you thought about that video because it's pretty awkward to watch. I don't know if you actually got a chance to watch the thing, but Bo's wearing black. It's a black background. And then it's like what he said kind of contradicted himself. And so it was just kind of odd to me.
I wanted to start there because, we heard, I know he does a weekly hit with the guys at Next Round Live. And, I know he kind of intimated a few weeks ago that, could be entering the transfer portal. We'll see. I don't know how this thing's going to shape up. So we kind of heard rumblings for a couple of weeks. And, I wonder how much, obviously, is Bo's thinking of, I want to move on. I wonder how much on Harsin's side is kind of like, look, man, we brought in, keep in mind, like they brought in TJ Finley, pretty like in the offseason where it was kind of like, well, wait a minute, everything's TJ's saying is he wants to go somewhere where he can compete for the job. And then obviously, was it the Georgia Southern game where he gets benched? I mean, like you've had all these little moments that have kind of hinted that this could be the end, but the guy is a legacy. So it is kind of weird to, when everybody in your family's played at Auburn and now you're going to move on is a little strange, but take me into what are you thinking ultimately led to the decision?
Yeah, and there's reports that, Bo and his father went and sat down with Harsin and there were demands that were out there, and I don't know what those are. And people keep asking, and the folks that reported it won't answer those questions. So that's an interesting dynamic of all of this. But shortly after that happened is when Bo Nix put up that interesting video on his Instagram page saying that he was leaving and he's transferring as a grad transfer. And so moving forward, it's okay. You look at Auburn's quarterbacks now, and obviously you got TJ Finley, who, like you said, Brian Harsin brought in from LSU. You got Demetrius Davis, who's the winningest or one of the most winningest high school quarterbacks in the history of Texas high school football, which is an incredible feat. And then you've got a guy in Holden Gariner who just won the state championship in Georgia with an incredible performance that's going to come in and sign with the Tigers on Wednesday. And so you look at these dudes, and it's like you got an extremely talented, unproven guy with Davis, and then Finley's a guy that Harsin went out and got. And, there's not a whole lot of guys on this roster that Harsin went out and got. Finley's one of them. And so how much does that matter? I mean, it seems like Harsin's one of those coaches that really likes his dudes, both as far as in the coaching staff and on his roster. So I think Finley's going to get the opportunity, but Gordy, you kind of get the feeling that they have to go to the portal to get a dude. And, there's reports of, a handful of guys that I think would be interesting to see if Auburn goes after, but we still don't really know what Brian Harsin wants in a quarterback. I think it's a guy like Holden Gariner, but is that the kind of thing where you just want to go and start a true freshman again? I don't think that's the way to go. And I also don't think TJ Finley's good enough to start for a full season based on what we've seen the past few weeks.
Yeah, and obviously the search for an offensive coordinator continues. So we'll get to that in a second. Real quick,
Sure.
to cap off Bo Nix, where does Bo end up? I mean, where do you see him going? Does he? I've seen that a couple of the quarterback at USC went into the portal. Obviously, Oklahoma. We'll see what happens there with Caleb Williams. I mean, there's tons of different places. But I just thought, the one that immediately jumped out to me that I thought would be interesting. Like, could you imagine USC Lincoln Riley, who basically was getting these transfers year after year from Baker Mayfield to Kyler Murray to Jalen Hurts, like maybe Bo could go there. Who was it? The Palmer brothers said Bo Nix could be a first-round quarterback. Like
Right.
maybe Lincoln Riley's the guy. They could bring him into his system at USC and turn him into that.
Yeah. And that's a popular one that you're hearing, him going out to USC. I don't know if I buy that. I'll believe it when it happens. I just don't think the fit definitely makes sense there. But I'm seeing a lot of Bo Nix to Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin needs a quarterback again. That'd be a fascinating thing. I think he's got the arm to do it. And I think he's got the athleticism to do it. I'm seeing Bo Nix to Texas A&M a ton, which is interesting. But Justin Hokanson, Auburn's on-3 reporter, he's been all over this whole process with his sources. And he said last night that his sources were saying Cincinnati, which is interesting, or UCF. Does Bo Nix follow Gus Malzahn to Orlando? Which, I mean, the jokes and the memes kind of write themselves there, right, Gordy? So I think those are your schools that you're looking at. But here's something that's really interesting to me. So we're recording this Monday afternoon, and about 30 minutes before we started recording, Bo Nix officially enters the transfer portal. And Gordy, he has a do not contact tag next to his name in the portal, which means he probably knows where he's already going. So there's no need to reach out to him. And I think that's incredibly interesting.
Yeah, no, that is. And you would think that news would come out very soon, probably sometime this week on where he's going to end up. The other one, Tank Bigsby. Very interesting to hear his name. Now, as of this recording, he has not officially entered the portal, but we're hearing from multiple sources now that it's going to happen. Why would Tank Bigsby bail this quickly? I mean, the guy just had a fantastic season for Auburn.
Well, I think a fantastic season for Tank and a fantastic season for a normal running back are different things. I think just getting 1,000-yard season may not be enough to satisfy what he wants to do. And look, I mean, a year ago at this time, Auburn fans were panicking after firing Gus Malzahn was, oh my gosh, we've got to keep Tank. And there's a lot of beliefs that that's the only reason they kept Auburn running backs coach and Auburn running back legend Cadillac Williams on staff, was because Tank Bigsby loved him so much. But there were all these reports of, oh my gosh, is Tank Bigsby going to transfer to Georgia? And, fortunately for the Tigers, it didn't happen a season ago, but those rumors have kicked up again, especially if Tank enters the transfer portal. It seems like Georgia is going to kind of be the favorite to land Bigsby services. But Gordy, when you look at former 5-star Bo Nix and former 5-star Tank Bigsby, and you look at their production, while Tank was really good for the Tigers and battled some injuries and things like that, and Bo definitely had his moments, but Auburn as a program failed them. Both of those guys should have been significantly better than what they were, but when you look at the supporting cast around them, both Bo Nix, obviously both of them impacted by the offensive line, and then also not really getting Bo Nix weapons to throw to. It's like the receivers peaked a year too early for Nix in the passing offense. And just when you looked at what Tank Bigsby had to do on every given play to get 6 yards, I mean, it's incredible what he was able to do. So that 1,000-yard season, if you go to Georgia, you may be closing in on 1,600 yards when it's all said and done, based on, just the guys that are in front of you. So I think that's what Tank wants to do. I think Tank has the ability to be one of those first or second round running backs, which is very hard to do in today's NFL, but I think that's what he wants. And I think he's capable of it just because he's so talented and gifted. So I think that's why he wants out. Assuming these reports are true. And like you said, at the time of us recording this, it's not official yet, but that's kind of the going theory here in Auburn.
More with Zac Blackerby right after this. Thank you guys again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Make sure to check out the Ultimate College Football Preview. The most comprehensive college football playoff preview begins this Friday. Need to remind you guys about our friends at Bet Online. Look, it is that time of year. Bowl season is about to start up. college basketball's getting fully underway, and you want to make sure you're going to our friends at BetOnline. They got you covered all season long with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. They remain your number one spot for all things sports action throughout the year. Head on over to their new updated website. You can do so on your mobile device, your desktop. Sign up today. Receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON. That will get you your bonus. Again, from basketball to football to boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the offers. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. Also, need to remind you about our friends over at Prize Picks. If you haven't signed up yet, what are you waiting for? They've got not just college football action, but they've got college basketball, and they're making that more exciting too. Look, you might be sitting at your house watching the game. That's fun and all, but it's way more fun when you're playing on Prize Picks. You can download the app there. The leader in college sports daily fantasy, offer more college football and basketball props than anyone in the world. And all of our users that make their first deposit, use our promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. You'll get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. It's an award-winning app. You can find in the App Store, Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy, and they offer safe and fast withdrawals. Don't hesitate. Go check out prizepicks.com. Use our promo code LOCKEDON or go to the App Store. Download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Continuing on here, Locked On SEC, and talking with our good buddy Zac Blackerby, host of the Locked On Auburn podcast, and continuing a little bit of this conversation. Zac, I did want to ask you, we got Bo Nix in the portal, we got Tank Bigsby possibly in the portal. Expectations for this Birmingham Bowl coming up in a couple of weeks. I mean, is it, I assume, TJ Finley's show and maybe Jarquez Hunter featured back in the backfield?
I think so. I think you would have seen TJ Finley either way, just based on, the nature of the quarterback room being injured. But hey, this is a prime opportunity for TJ Finley to kind of say to the coaching staff, look, you give me a few weeks of preparation. I'm ready to go. I can perform in this offense, and what does the offense look like, and all that. But yeah, I think it's going to be Finley's job, at least in the Birmingham Bowl. But I mean, there's a lot of dudes that aren't going to be able to play, and they're playing against a pretty good Houston team. Somehow our friends at betonline.ag, they have Auburn favored by 2.5 is what it opened at. That surprised me, Gordy. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, but this is a tough draw for the Tigers. I mean, Tigers going into it at 6-6, and Brian Harsin does not want to have a losing record with his first season on the Plains, especially with his quarterback and possibly his ace running back leaving. I think the situation for the roster next season does not look great at this current moment in time. So you really need that 7-6 season and that positive momentum being a good Houston team going into the offseason. But you're missing guys like Roger McCreary and Zacoby McClain. Does Owen Papo play? I mean, we haven't heard an official word on him, but he's missed 7 games this season. You got to think he's probably not going to play. What does Smoke Monday do? He's probably going to leave and go to the draft. And so a lot of dudes on defense are gone. Your offensive line, you had Tayshawn Manning transfer out. Nick Brahms, he started 33 games for you at center. He's going to miss up to 8 weeks due to, a minor procedure on his knee. And then Tank and Bo were gone. So not a great spot if you're Auburn as far as personnel goes into this Birmingham Bowl.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how this one plays out. Let me ask you a quick recruiting nugget, because look, Wednesday is a massive day here for, it's the early signing period. This is where most schools are going to sign about 90% of their recruiting classes. And, you got most kids already committed, but you're going to have some big announcements coming as well. Auburn just got a big announcement on Monday, and it was so big. I actually had the 24/7 recruiting rankings pulled up. Auburn was 35. I hit refresh. They went up from 35 to 26 in the recruiting rankings. 4-star cornerback Austin Osbury. How big of a get was that for the Tigers?
I think it's huge. And you look at what the Auburn football program has done with cornerbacks, and they've done such a good job of turning guys like Roger McCreary, who's a 3-star guy, who may have been a 4th-round pick 2 years ago, and now he's probably going to be a top 20 selection in the 2022 NFL draft. He talked about that, and all the stories that I'm reading about Austin Osbury, that is what he's talking about, is Roger McCreary, and Roger McCreary's gone. And so Osbury's going to have a chance to compete for a job early and often. And so that's something that's going to be really, really exciting. And also Harsin kind of flexing his muscles a little bit, getting a guy out of Louisiana with, Brian Kelly being the new guy out there. He wanted to build a fence around the state of Louisiana, but Osbury must not be into that weird rotating dancing video that LSU had going on.
Here's what I was told, because Verge Osbury works in the LSU front office. He's a former Tiger, and his son goes to school at U-High, which is on LSU's campus. And we've seen in recent years, there's been guys from U-High go to Alabama and go to other schools. And what we've heard is this. Look, if you're Austin Osbury and you grow up in the LSU office all day, you're with your dad, you maybe get off a class, you go meet your dad at school, you're sitting in his office. Oh, wait, we got a basketball game tonight. Yeah, you got to drag him to the game. You've lived and seen LSU sports your entire life. Yeah. Sometimes these kids just wanted something different, man. I want to go create my own legacy, get out of this shadow. And that's what it sounds like with Austin is, look, Auburn is still in the SEC footprint, but at least I can get away from this, go build my own thing. And so, yeah, it's a huge get for Bryan Harsin. And man, on a week where it feels like there's been nothing but bad news for Auburn, this was some good news. And it's big for Auburn because let's be honest, LSU just made a coaching change. They didn't have a head coach for a couple of weeks, and their recruiting class was better than Auburn's, who has a sitting head coach in Bryan Harsin. That to me is crazy. And so anyway, we'll see what happens here on Wednesday. Massive, massive day across the SEC.
Yeah. And Gordy, Auburn fans have been upset with Bryan Harsin and his staff based on, for the vast majority of the season, like they were behind Vanderbilt in recruiting. And there is a ton of positive thoughts, feelings, excitement about what's going to happen on Wednesday in the next few weeks. They feel like they're about to hit a ton of home runs this week with a lot of guys that are announcing between Auburn and Alabama and Michigan, the same four schools essentially for all these prospects. It seems like Darius Clemens is an interesting one, the kid out of Oregon. So they believe that they're about to just flip all of this recruiting stuff upside down and end up with a top 15 class when it's all said and done. Now, then you have to ask the question, is that good enough to compete at the highest level in the SEC? I don't know. But also, it's like you could have a great class, but you need to win in 2022. How patient is Auburn going to be if Harsin goes 6-6 or 7-5 next season? And that's kind of a dynamic that I think is pretty interesting. But a ton of, I'm surprised because talking to folks within the program, Gordy, there's a ton of positive feelings about the next few months because Bo Nix was tied to Gus Malzahn, right? And now with him gone, whether Harsin wanted him gone or not, and I don't know the story to all that, but it almost feels like Wednesday is the start of the Bryan Harsin era, legitimately. Yeah. It's like he had to play with some of, the toys that Gus Malzahn left behind, but it seems like now it's like, okay, finally we can let Bryan Harsin do what he wants to do. And a lot of folks in the program are pumped about that.
Well, it's either going to be the start of the Bryan Harsin era or the start of the end of the Bryan Harsin era. Nice. Do not go well. I wanted to hit you a couple quick hitters just from around the SEC just to get your thoughts. What did you make of the Brian Kelly hire at LSU and the Billy Napier hire at Florida?
I love both of them. I think they both make a ton of sense. You and I talked about this at some point, but Brian Kelly has been a winner everywhere he's been. And so I think he will have the tools at LSU to compete. And then Napier, somebody should have scooped him up a year ago.
They tried. Auburn talked to him.
You're right. And, stories coming out that like somebody offered him the job at Auburn that like wasn't qualified to offer him the job, which is super interesting. And that Brett Venables had that story as well. So
Yellowwood guy,
who knows, man, who knows the Yellowwood guy, but yeah. So I think both of those guys were great selections. And, the more I hear Napier talk, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, I bet these players absolutely love him, especially coming from, having Dan Mullen the year before. It's just going to be a total culture shift. I think a lot of those Gators are really going to love him.
He's a Saban disciple, and he sounds like it when he talks. Yeah. Texas A&M, big news coming out the last day or so. Zach Calzada entering the transfer portal. I know
Calzone.
Your Calzone joke goes out the window. You can't do that anymore. And they lose their defensive coordinator, Mike Elko, who takes a job at Duke. I know A&M's about to sign a top 3 recruiting class. It is absolutely loaded. But, man, that's a big blow to lose your DC just days from signing day.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. But I mean, they're going to have so much talent, Gordy. I mean, when you look at A&M, they're going to be able to out talent everyone on their roster except for Alabama for the next few seasons, and every few years when they get to play Georgia. So, can they put the game plan together like they did this past season and beat Alabama? That's the most important game of the season every year moving forward. And they were able to win it this past year, and they had a chance at it, going late into the season. If they had somewhat of an offense, they would have had a chance to be a playoff team.
Well, as one of my friends from another SEC school said, man, all that talent to go 8-4. All right, good for you, Aggies.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, eventually Jimbo's got to take that next step forward. Lastly, Bryce Young wins the Heisman. How much does it suck that kid's got to come? I mean, if you're Alabama, you're loving it. But how much does it suck for the rest of the SEC? He's got to come back next year for another year.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous that he can't go pro. What a dumb rule. And with all this age of player empowerment and giving voice to the players and more power to the players, and now they can receive money. I think it's only a matter of time until there's not going to be a minimum as far as Bryce Young's ready to play now in the NFL. He's a first round pick if he goes now. So, but no, props to him. I thought his note of he's been doubted his whole life.
Yeah, that was
super interesting. It's like, I don't know about that, man. I don't know about that. I'm sure you worked hard. I don't want to take anything away from you, but
I was given $1 million before I started. Okay, I had to bust through these chains of corporate empowerment. I had to prove all the doubters wrong, dude. You didn't have many doubters, all right?
No. In fact, people were wondering why you weren't the favorite even earlier in the season. Like, why did CJ Stroud of Ohio State even have a shot in this thing? But hey, he may repeat the whole thing. I mean, it is set up for him to be able to put up incredible numbers each and every year as long as he wants to be at Alabama. So props to Bryce Young. Absolutely.
Last thing I'll say, Zach, think of that last minute. I know it hurts to think about, but the last minute of regulation in the Iron Bowl, how much that changed. It changed the narrative that people said that was Bryce Young's Heisman moment, taking them down the field to force overtime. It changed possibly Bo Nix and Tank Bigsby. Maybe if they win the Iron Bowl, they feel like Auburn has finished on a high note. I'm not saying they don't leave. Maybe they still do, but just the whole narrative changes. Everybody feels more good and happy about Brian Harsin. Like, that last minute just changed so much. Bama wouldn't be the 1 seed in the playoff right now. Like, it was a chain reaction that changed a lot.
Yeah, it would change everything. It would change how you feel about Brian Harsin. You're not in the Birmingham Bowl, but still, you still have the same issues, but the feeling would be different. You're absolutely right. But you still look at it, it's like, why could Auburn's offense not score in the second half consistently after week 6? That's still a big question. Like, does Mike Bobo keep his job just because the defense has one more stop?
Right.
Maybe. I don't know if he should or not, but maybe. So yeah, that's an interesting conversation for sure. That was so painful, Gordy. I just moved on from it. But thank you for bringing it up again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, a lot of Auburn fans have had to turn the page. He is Zac Blackerby, host of Locked On Auburn. What do you have on the podcast this week?
Yeah, man, just getting folks ready for early signing day, but obviously talking about Bo Nix, Tank Bigsby, and is Auburn going to have enough players to play in the Birmingham Bowl? Who knows? But yeah, we'll talk about all that every single day on Locked On Auburn, wherever you get your podcasts, and also on YouTube.
Zach, great stuff, man. We'll do it again soon.
Hey, thank you, brother.
All right, that's Zac Blackerby, host of Locked On Auburn. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll go around the conference. What is a holiday memory you have when it comes to Omaha Steaks? The holidays are around the corner. Finding the perfect gift is tricky. Omaha Steaks wants to make it easy to send friends and family an unforgettable gift guaranteed to be loved. Just go to omahasteaks.com, enter the word college into the search bar to order the perfect gift package. For $99.99, $100, you get 24 entrees with the world famous bacon wrapped filet mignons, chicken breast, sides, desserts, and so much more. When you use the code COLLEGE, you'll also get an additional 8 Omaha steak burgers free with your order. We've all heard the reports about shortages, shipping delays. You don't want to wait. Order the perfect gift package today at omahasteaks.com. You'll get 8 free burgers when you enter the code COLLEGE. Achieve gifting greatness with Omaha Steaks. Incredible flavor, incredible value, and 100% guaranteed. omahasteaks.com, keyword college. Here, Locked Locked On SEC, and appreciate Zac Blackerby coming on with us, talk all things Auburn. But we got a ton of stuff we got to get into, tons of different topics and transfers and transfer portals and all kinds of stuff. So let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Intercepted.
Takes the handoff.
What a catch.
Around the conference.
And we start on Monday. Texas A&M suffered a significant blow as news broke that quarterback Zach Calzada will be leaving the program, entering the transfer portal. Calzada did not begin the year as the Aggies starter. He took over in week 2 against Colorado after Haynes King was injured. But the 6'4", 210-pounder threw for over 2,100 yards, 17 touchdowns, 9 picks. He was rated as a 3-star prospect coming out of high school before choosing A&M. He had offers from Georgia, Cincinnati, and Louisville. He joins Spencer Radler, Keaton Slovis, Bo Nix, Max Johnson, Miles Brennan, and Harrison Bailey as some of the biggest names out in the transfer portal. Of course, he'll always be remembered by Aggie fans as the guy who slayed the Giant, finally beat Nick Saban and Alabama. But he will be on the move playing elsewhere. Also, Texas A&M freshman defensive back Drayden Norwood, who did not see any action last season for the Aggies, is looking to play elsewhere. He was the top-rated player in Arkansas in 2021, the number 24 cornerback in the class as a 4-star prospect. He committed to A&M July of 2020. He appeared in 2 games this year against Prairie View and LSU, but did not record any stats. So Drayden Norwood on the move. Over at Kentucky, they're losing an experienced linebacker with starting experience to the NCAA transfer portal on Monday. Wildcat senior linebacker Marquez Bembry entered his name into the portal. Spent 3 seasons at Kentucky after playing JUCO. He had 9 tackles in 12 games this year. That came after he had 27 tackles in 11 games in 2020. Also made 2 starts for the Wildcats. He still has 1 year of eligibility remaining because of the extra year given to COVID students. Mississippi State safety Janari Dean. He is leaving the program after 2 seasons. He's 5'11", 195 pounds, a redshirt freshman. He will look to continue his career elsewhere. He redshirted during his first year in Starkville, played sparingly in 9 games this year, recording 3 tackles. He was rated as a 3-star prospect, the number 11 overall recruit in his home state of Mississippi. So we'll see where Janari Dean ends up. Over at South Carolina, after 3 years in Columbia, offensive lineman Vincent Murphy on the move. He announced he has entered the transfer portal. He'll be leaving the Gamecocks, still has 3 years of eligibility, played in 1 game while redshirting in 2019, played in 2 games in 2020, and this season he played in 8 games, providing some depth at both center and guard. Over at Missouri, we know linebacker Jamie Petway had entered the transfer portal a few weeks ago. He has now announced he is going to Florida Atlantic. He's a redshirt sophomore from the state of Georgia, played in 7 games this year. Outside of transfer portal and all that, this is an interesting story. Mike Gundy, head coach at Oklahoma State, apparently was interested in the Florida job and had his agent send a letter to AD Scott Strickland to explain why he was ready to make the move to Gainesville. According to the letter, Gundy was, quote, very interested in the head coaching vacancy at Florida. He is confident he would bring leadership and passion necessary to re-energize your football team and the Gator fan base, he wrote to Scott Strickland. So ultimately they decided to go with Billy Napier, but Mike Gundy was ready to jump ship from Okie State for Florida. Pretty interesting there. And lastly, the AP All-American teams have come out. Your first team offense, SEC members on the team. Bryce Young was the first team AP All-American quarterback, followed by Jameson Williams from Alabama, first team wide receiver. Derry Kennard from Kentucky, first team offensive tackle, and Kenyon Green from A&M was an offensive guard on the first team offense. On the first team defense, AP All-Americans, Jordan Davis and DeMarvin Leal on the defensive line. At linebacker, Will Anderson from Alabama and Kobe Dean from Georgia, and Roger McCreary from Auburn at corner. So congrats to all those guys. Well-deserved recognition for everything that they achieved this year as first team All-Americans. And that is just about going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. My thanks to Zac Blackerby for joining us to talk all things Auburn football. Tomorrow, a big show. We're going to be getting you guys set for the early signing day. Our buddy Sam Spiegelman is scheduled to join us, one of the best recruiting guys out there covering many of the SEC states. So we'll talk about that with him and get you guys ready for a big signing day. I'm Chris Gordy. This is Locked On SEC. Remember to subscribe, follow us on YouTube and on Twitter at Locked On SEC at Chris Gordy. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.